Hello, and welcome to our final show of the Signal Halifax. We're coming to you live from the University of King's College Library here in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. I'm your host, Cam Towner, and coming up, an ice storm knocked out power for thousands of Nova Scotians. Why you might want to ride the rails on your next trip. A photo shoot that's gone to the dogs for a good cause, and a Dalhousie instructor keeping the Migma language alive.
I'm happy or content. Or if you want to use Micklish, all right, Dewey. Just kidding, don't use that one.
But we begin with new census data from Statistics Canada. Overall, Canada's population is growing twice as fast as other G7 countries. And for the first time since the 1940s, population growth in the Maritimes is outpacing the prairie provinces. Our reporter Will McLernon caught up with a group of new Nova Scotians on why they decided to make the move to Canada's ocean playground.
I actually think the pandemic had a massive influence on me moving out here.
Winnipeg native Caitlin Scott moved to Halifax in September 2021.
The whole Atlantic bubble and all of the ways that Halifax handled the pandemic were really big pulls and really represented the city well.
Scott went to university here. When she graduated, she moved back home to Manitoba, but she wanted a tight-knit work environment and found that in Halifax as the logistics coordinator for a small local business, Cove Kombucha. Scott says many of her friends from Dalhousie have also decided to start their careers here.
I think young people are moving to Halifax because it's more affordable. There are a lot of jobs that are starting here.
Scott is part of a trend. The population of Halifax has grown at 2% a year, making it one of the fastest growing cities in Canada. It's mostly young people in their 20s and 30s, and many from Ontario, like professional musician Robert Reed and his wife Nancy.
When the pandemic hit, it pretty well killed my job prospects. You know, restaurants, hotels, live music went away. So we thought, okay, well, I guess I'm retired. And at that point, we said, well, then we're free to move anywhere we want.
Reed says the East Coast appeal is working from home, big backyards, and getting out in nature.
I don't see us moving back to Ontario, but I think doing this big move, it kind of made us feel open to kind of anywhere type thing. You know, like, so if our daughters end up settling out in BC, then, you know, we might move out a little bit closer to them kind of in time, but for at least the next 5 to 10 years, we'd be here.
The pandemic was the push to move out east, but Scott says the lifestyle is why she plans to stay.
I love that you can walk everywhere and everywhere's so accessible. The weather's so nice. It's such a young, up-and-coming city.
Scotia just surpassed the 1 million person mark, a population figure the province hopes to double by the year 2060. Will McLernon, The Signal, Halifax.
Thousands of Nova Scotians spent last weekend without power in freezing temperatures. An ice storm left Nova Scotia Power scrambling to clear the lines. Hannah Bryanton caught up with a videographer who spent his days driving around to capture the winter weather.
A weekend storm in Nova Scotia knocked out power for close to 50,000 residents. Freezing rain coated everything in a thick layer of ice. Paul Creelman lives in Beaverbank.
But I was quite surprised at the extent of the ice that had fallen, and it was you know, a lot of people suffered through it, and it was tough with the outages.
Creelman lost power for 48 hours. Some communities in Beaverbank and Lower Sackville endured power outages for 3 days.
Unfortunately, there's with all the trees that we have in Beaverbank, it's kind of a downside that those things can happen, but it is usually a pretty beautiful place, and it's just one of those events.
Nova Scotia Power opened an emergency operations center in preparation for the storm, but did not anticipate the severity of the outages.
So the ice buildup itself was very significant, weighing down on the trees and causing many trees to come down into the power lines. And the temperature stayed really cold after that.
The ice-coated trees created a beautiful scene. Everything looked like it was made of glass. Unfortunately, it also meant it didn't melt and caused a lot of problems.
In some cases, in single locations, there'd be many trees along a street that had come down onto the power lines. In addition to that, the ice stayed on the roads for a long period of time as well. So getting into the areas where the trees had come down was challenging for our crews.
After the 48-hour mark, approximately 15,000 people still did not have power.
I think overall people were pretty understanding. I mean, if you look at some of the local Facebook groups and that sort of thing, you'll see always negative comments. But I think depending on how long you had to wait for your power, depending, is kind of how you felt about Nova Scotia Power. But I think overall people were kind of okay with it.
Some were concerned more outages may occur because of the amount of rainfall Tuesday. Nova Scotia Power said the rain will help melt the buildup of ice on trees and power lines. Hannah Bryanton, The Signal, Beaverbank.
Now, today is Neowaway, Thursday, if you're watching this live. It's one of the first things I learned from a Migma language teacher. I drove out to Sebeganegedy First Nation to talk to Curtis Michael about a brand new course he teaches at Dalhousie.
Welly is like, remember it's something good? Welliaji buna, welliaji buna, welliaji, welliaji, welliaji buna, and many more.
This is how Curtis Michael begins his class, with a hearty welcome and greeting, all in Migma.
My name's Curtis Michael. I'm a language instructor or professor at Dalhousie University. I just started this year.
He's teaching his class online due to the pandemic.
Did I say I was having a quiz this week?
Curtis might be new to Dalhousie, but he's been teaching Migma in the Sebeganegedy First Nation for almost 20 years.
The big difference with Dalhousie is I feel like I'm reaching a wider base. They're very interested, and I like that because I know it's spreading.
The new course from Dalhousie is called Migma Language for non-speakers. And while Migma students can take the course for free, Michael says he loves seeing a mix of people enrolled in the classes.
Well, I'm happy or content. Or if you want to use Micklish, all right, Dewey. Just kidding, don't use that one. You'll hear it though, all right, Dewey. Because our language is so different, it's polysynthetic. I could explain to you what our language is about in about 5 minutes, and then you realize, wow, that's a cultural value coming to something that's thousands and thousands of years old, coming from that one word. Oh, you make me proud.
And this is the first university class that I've ever taken.
Carly Doyle is a Mohawk from Six Nations. She always wanted to learn Haudenosaunee, but she lives here in Mi'kma'ki, so instead, she's learning Mi'kmaq.
The way Curtis Michael teaches is so non-colonial that it makes learning fun, and it almost feels like the learning is catered to me.
Beyond the classroom, Michael says social media is an important tool to share the language further.
And if you're going to share, at least press like. All right, let's start up here with the one in the circle. Ready? Daligiski, Daligiski. How's the weather? That's all it means. In October, we have posters put out every year. And one of them, I remember it said, share a moment, share a culture. And to me, sharing a language teaches teaching it, right? It's just sharing a language. And it's for those who appreciate our culture and understand where we're coming from. Great, my darling. Hi, how you doing?
Michael said, if there's one word I should remember from my visit, it's need up. Friend. Cam Towner, The Signal, Sebeganegedy. Trains, planes, and a YouTuber who says that Canadians are missing out. For every person who rides a train in Canada, 33 others have hopped on a flight. But for some rail riders, the journey is part of the fun. Ryan Belfontaine has that story.
General public have a really bad opinion about train. That's really unfortunate.
Simply Railway is a YouTube channel with over 150,000 subscribers. The man behind the camera is a Parisian named Thibaut Constant, who reviews train rides all over the world.
People think trains are slow. Of course they are slow, of course, but it's a whole experience that people don't really know.
Constant was impressed with the trip from Montreal to Halifax.
The sleeper train was really comfy. Among the most comfiest I ever tried, actually. The service was really good. Employees were really nice. The food was outstanding.
The Ocean is the oldest continually operated passenger train in North America. It's run the route from Halifax to Montreal since 1904.
Of course, the scenery was pretty good. I really didn't expect that much from that train trip. That was my first time in Nova Scotia and Quebec, and it was just beautiful.
Despite the rave review, the Via Rail station in Halifax often appears mostly empty these days.
People who took the train were people who didn't want to fly, people who love to travel by train. It's not like regular commuter people between Halifax and Montreal. I didn't see any businessmen on board.
So how do trains compare with planes? For two people going from Halifax to Montreal, a cabin on a train costs about the same as 2 economy class tickets on a plane. You can stretch your legs on the train. And the cabin comes with a bed, private bathroom, and meals. But the trip will take 20 hours longer.
We need to slow down our travel, like going for a weekend across the globe for like a party or something, it's not okay.
A few years ago, my best friend and I went from Toronto to Montreal.
Daphne Gould usually flies about twice per year, but would love it if Canada adopted the high-speed rail she saw in Europe.
If you could spend that time just traveling by train, it's way more environmentally friendly.
Constant says if people took the time to take the train, he's sure they would come around to share his love of riding the rails.
It's gonna come back at some point, for sure.
Ryan Bellefontaine, The Signal, Halifax.
Now, Burgess is working with Pinckney and her team to get to provincials.
There's still other very good provincial senior teams in Nova Scotia other than the Colleen Pinckney team.
Right.
So there's other teams that would love to go as well.
Pandemic restrictions are starting to ease, but COVID still impacts our daily lives. And for journalism students, sometimes it means our stories fall apart. I'm joined by Abby Macleod, journalist with The Signal. Hey, Abby.
Hi, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes, it's my pleasure. So what happened with your story this week?
Well, I was supposed to film a story this week, but as you said, things are all over the place right now, and my story ended up falling apart. I was supposed to film in a residence, and somebody living there ended up not feeling well the day I was supposed to film, so we thought we'd better play it safer than be sorry, and ended up not filming at all.
Yeah, probably for the best, but it's still a sore spot, right? Yeah, and this is, of course, the final week for our video workshop. How would you describe the challenges that we faced, this whole time?
It's been a unique situation. So the workshop's only 6 weeks long in total, and 2 of those were strictly online. So that meant that the class was all over the place geographically. Some people were still in Ontario from the Christmas break. Some people were scattered around the Atlantic region. The time of year also is a difficult one for journalism. January is known to be slower for stories. We've also been hit with several large storms over the past couple of weeks, so that made accessing things a little bit more difficult. And of course, the pandemic always makes things a little harder.
Yeah, and mobility is quite important in visual storytelling because, of course, we got to get out there and actually get the footage. So how hard has that been in this pandemic at this point?
It has been difficult. At several points over the course of our workshop, we've had reporters out sick, we've had people isolating because of close contacts, and we've also had sources that's happened to as well. So either calling in last minute saying they're not feeling well and we'd better cancel the shoot. But there's also just more restrictions in society in general. So places that we would normally be able to go in and film, we aren't able to get in right now.
Yeah, and for those at home, what are some of the ways that we've found to circumvent these challenges?
Well, we've been able to get video sent to us actually from some of our sources. So when we're not physically able to go and film ourselves, we can get video from people in our stories to include in the final products. Zoom interviews have also played a big part and have come in very handy, as you can see in some of our stories from this week. Alternative formats to storytelling as well, like our interview we're doing right now, have come in handy and helped make our shows possible. But the biggest thing is to not be too hard on yourself when a story falls apart, because that's just the reality of what we're living with right now.
Yeah, very, very important. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Cam.
As Valentine's Day approaches, one pet store in Dartmouth wants to spread the love and raise money at the same time. Victoria Welland has that story.
Fred is getting ready for his close-up. The French bulldog is posing for a Valentine's Day photo shoot to raise money for the SPCA.
Fred is adorable, so we get as many pictures of him as possible, and it was for a good cause.
A Pet Value in Dartmouth hosted the event on Sunday. Owners paid $10 to have their furry friend photographed with roses and hearts.
They're beautiful dogs, and they should have their pictures taken. And the SPCA we have adopted from the SPCA, and we love what they do for the animals and anything we can do to help.
The Dartmouth SPCA needs the donations more than ever. Spokesperson Taylor Hustis says this is a tough time of year for the shelter.
Adoptions and donations are usually really low in January and February. We find around these types of months, we're not really top of mind for a lot of families.
Along with taking in strays and unwanted animals, the SPCA runs several community programs, like their pet food pantry for owners in need. Hustis says the Valentine's Day donations will make a big difference.
So we don't receive any government funding for our shelters here. All across the province, none of our shelters receive that government funding. So we really just rely on the generosity of animal lovers and the community to help these animals. So this funding is going to help so much, from everything from that safe sheltering to that life-saving veterinary care, really just giving them that second chance at a happily ever after.
Dressed in their Sunday best, these picture-perfect pups and their owners will be sharing the love this Valentine's Day. Victoria Welland, The Signal, Dartmouth.
Now, we love our pets, but I'll be the first one to admit it, they can get a little expensive. Now, one woman has decided to start a community paw pantry to help hungry pets. Tyra Levy says she's been overwhelmed with the demand and the donations. Marissa Burney shares her story in this 90-second doc.
We just keep getting donations after donations. My name is Tyra. I'm the manager here at Health Mutts. I've been in the dog industry for about 7 years. I noticed a few people on various Facebook groups looking for help with dog food. So I just reached out and thought, maybe I can get a few donations to help out a couple people. And then within 2 weeks, we had food delivered to over 200 people. Right? Dogs aren't cheap, and situations change. I've been in the position where I need to make sacrifices for myself to be able to do the best for my dog, and I know lots of people are in that same situation. Selfless service is kind of something that I try and live by. I come here usually every Sunday on my day off and round up 15 or 20 deliveries, and it takes the entire day from morning till night to do everything. So it's really nice to be able to hear how it impacts people's lives when you deliver it to them, and they usually send their dogs out to greet you and say, oh, this is who you've made Christmas for, and as long as people need it, I'm still gonna do it.
Volunteers are at the heart of so many community activities. In curling, one volunteer coach rocks. He's helping a Truro women's team earn a spot in the upcoming provincials, and maybe even worlds. Kaylee Addis has that story.
Todd Burgess has curled for 40 years. He recently competed at nationals in Alberta. But for 20 years, he spent much of his time in the curling rink as a volunteer coach.
Often coaching isn't about being the best at something, but you have a different perspective on how to play the game or how to portray it to players.
Yeah.
Line's good.
Burgess coaches Team Colleen Pinckney, a senior women's team in Truro. Volunteering as a coach is a big commitment. Team member Marion McCulley says the team practices 3 to 4 times a week, for an hour and a half at a time.
He brings a lot to the team.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like he makes these practices valuable. Like sometimes you don't have a good coach or no coach. Lots of teams don't have a coach.
Oh, wow.
You just come out and you throw and you don't have objectives and goals to meet.
Right.
So he sets objectives for us for the practice.
The team won World Seniors 12 years ago. Now, Burgess is working with Pinckney and her team to get to provincials.
There's still other very good provincial senior teams in Nova Scotia other than the Colleen Pinckney team.
Right.
So there's other teams that would love to go as well.
Provincials would have wrapped up on February 7th, but are postponed due to COVID. Burgess says he's trying to keep them sharp until then.
We're trying to become competitive when the provincials, Canadians have won the Worlds again. That's their goal. And I'm trying to help them get there.
Provincials will take place sometime in March. Team Colleen Pinckney and Coach Burgess will find out if they get one step closer to meeting their goal. Kaylee Addis, The Signal, Toronto.
And that's a wrap. For more news stories, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow The Signal on Twitter. Thanks for watching. I'm Cam Towner.